And good afternoon. It's just about 5 o'clock here at K-Squid, and that means it's time for Talk of the Bay. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman, here with you on a Thursday afternoon, and I am joined by Karen Delaney, the volunteer queen of the Volunteer Center, the executive director, who is retiring from a long time there. We're going to be talking with her about volunteerism, what it looks like in Santa Cruz County, and how to get involved in your local community. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Rachel. I am delighted to be here with you.
It's great to have you. Now, what is the Volunteer Center, in case people don't know that you have been shepherding through all these years?
The Volunteer Center is a local nonprofit that is the hub for people and groups and businesses who want to connect with other people and do good in the world. So part of the Volunteer Center is to make it, to be able to reach out across all the causes in the community and keep the best updated information so that when someone wants to start taking action, it's easy. We have listings of over 300 nonprofit and government partners on our website, scvolunteercenter.org. So our whole mission is to make it easier for people to connect for good. And, you know, that involves reaching out to all the nonprofits. It involves engaging volunteers. We are up to about 15,000 volunteers a year that we're connecting with our own programs. We do manage about 15, 20 programs with our nonprofit partners. We also, one of the things that in talking to volunteers and talking to people who want to do good in the community, crowdsourcing, which is a tool that, a power that the internet has given us, this idea that when lots of people have small amounts of things that they want to give, how do you aggregate them in a way that has a big impact so that a person doesn't have to call up 20 nonprofits? So we also have been the home for crowdsourcing some other big things. After disasters, we'll often help crowdsource helping with disaster cleanup. Santa Cruz Gives. We're the nonprofit that hosts the Santa Cruz Gives collective online end of the year fundraising local campaign that just raised over $2 million in a really bad financial climate from local givers out here. So it is a wonderful place to work because you get to see the whole community show up, all the wonderful ways that individual people are trying to make our world better, all the wonderful businesses who make being involved in the community a part of their bottom line. So we have great resources on our website if people want to have one-stop shopping. So I could talk about this for a long while, but I'll take a break there.
You got to let me ask a question.
Yeah.
Because I have so many. So you are departing after how many years?
I first joined the Volunteer Center right out of college, really, in 1983, and I became the executive director in 1985. So over 40 years as the executive director. And it's been just a joy. Hard work, but also just a joy. It was not my plan to stay. I thought, okay, I'll take a gap year, pay off some student loans. I always wanted to change the world for good. So my plan was to go to law school and pursue a career in public law or politics. But at the Volunteer Center, when I saw just really astonishingly how quietly so many people were doing so many amazing things that really mattered. I felt like I found a home, and it's been a joy to have pretty much my whole career in service to volunteers and nonprofits.
Now, let's talk about in general the role that volunteers play in nonprofits. A lot of us in nonprofits just take that for granted. Mm-hmm. We never take our volunteers for granted. But the idea that we would run primarily on the energy of volunteers was always part of our model. But what are so that's K-Squids. We have 150 people. You just saw several of us going in and out. But you can't see them all at once unless you're at an event. So if you're a state park, for example, do you have volunteers too?
Oh, yeah. This is one of the things I've become an evangelist, because a lot of things that are really important and just quietly in the background, good parenting, strong families, volunteers, people stepping up, that are really essential to the parts of our American journey and our American values that I love most, really are about making room for individuals to step up. And if you look through our history, all of the great social movements that we learn about in history books, the environmental movement, the civil rights movement, the movement for worker equity, they all started as nonprofit enterprises. Public education started as a nonprofit enterprise. Museums, culture, the fact that we still have the ability in almost every community across the United States to attend a play by Shakespeare or watch a ballet or listen to a symphony. That isn't business, the private sector bringing it to us. That is not the government largely bringing it to us, although what the government is really good at is looking at letting the nonprofit sector be a living laboratory, and when they figure things out that are amazing, to scale them with money. But the execution of not just our parks, the entire cultural infrastructure of every community is a nonprofit. The entire kids' sports, nonprofits. All that infrastructure, not just health and human services, but also civil rights, advocacy, those are what people choose to do because they are passionate, and they support it with their time, they support it with their money, they support it with their voice. So if you stop and think about how important volunteerism is to the quality of life, there's lots of data available now that shows communities with lower volunteer rates, they have lower property values, they have weaker economies, they have lower voting rates. People who volunteer an average of 2 hours a week or more are happier, healthier, and live on average 2 years longer than people who don't volunteer. So volunteerism is good for the community, but it's also really good for us. People are social, people need connections, and doing something that is purposeful and meaningful, where at the end of the day you feel like, wow, I made a difference today, that is a great feeling.
And and this probably, it doesn't surprise you, but now that it's been scientifically underscored by neuroscientists, that you actually, not only do you live longer when you're giving back to your community, but you also are happier in general. It just staves off depression and isolation because you're out of your house, and it makes all these connections in your brain. It also releases dopamine. So not that you need scientists to tell you how good it feels and why you should volunteer, but it underscores what you just said, which is that's our comfort zone. We evolved in small bands of humans that were completely intertwined with each other. And so we're just trying to reclaim, perhaps by volunteering, the feeling that people had of what was normal, which is everybody raised everybody's kids, everybody shared their hunting, expertise and the results of that hunting. So it was a small, interwoven society of humans that we, for thousands and thousands of years, lived like. It's only in the past 10,000 where we became agrarian that people started fighting over personal property and all the things that came with it of private enterprise and capitalism. So we're trying to reclaim a little bit of our human heritage, I think, when we volunteer and do things. And I was driving up to the Bay Area the other day, and it was full of garbage along the highway. And I just thought, we need to re-get the garbage collecting volunteers out here, because it's just changed so drastically since we were kids. And there was a strong message about litter. But that's a soapbox that you probably heard before me say.
There's a great, that's the creativity of people to notice a problem. I noticed this, it's my career to kind of try and figure out what keeps people from volunteering, what attracts them to volunteering. And it usually is a couple things. One is personal passion. The other is, so what I love about volunteering is in a big world with lots of problems, volunteers approach a problem from a very unique way. People who really care about that issue are the ones who solve it. And it's not for money. It's not for fame. It's out of a genuine desire to solve a problem. So volunteers are very efficient and solution focused. They're also very creative, and they're very invitational, because if you're working on a problem, most problems, garbage on the side of the road, reading scores of kids, you name it, keeping Shakespeare alive, this radio station, they're social endeavors, they're collective endeavors. So if you want to be around people who are creative and solution focused, not the complainers, not the people who like to talk about problems or blame people, but actually solve problems. If you want to be around people who are invitational and say, you want to come on down and help. And while you're helping us clean up or shovel, of course, your ideas. We get to know each other. We are all hands together. So it's a very purposeful and meaningful environment. It's also a very lively environment, full of creative people, full of invitational people, full of people with lots of differences who don't have to agree about everything, but they know how to respectfully work together.
And they know what they care about. We're watching just under our very eyes, coalescing of people in Minneapolis. Just what's the need? How do we fulfill it? How do we protect the people we're wanting to protect without endangering them, driving too close to their house or whatever. And people were figuring it out on the fly. And we should never have to do it under that kind of duress. But I think watching what's happening there is motivating groups all over the country to learn from their experience and prepare and be ready should it happen anywhere near us. So that's exciting, but also terrifying to think that we have to have these safety groups suddenly coalesce around being attacked by people paid by our own government. We never thought we'd be here, but here we are. And if you stay home doom scrolling, you're going to get very scared and depressed. But if you go out and join one of these groups or give them money or learn about them anyway, go to a meeting, you might find that it feels better than sitting at home.
That's a really good point. People ask me all the time, doing this for a long time, like, isn't it depressing to it's like no matter how many volunteers you recruit, isn't it kind of depressing? Aren't you over, like, there's one more problem? You're still trying to build housing. You're still trying to, and honestly, What I've learned over time, my answer is the longer I do this, the more hopeful I am. And really where I'm at about this is I am absolutely convinced that seeing how creative, because the great thing about nonprofits, it is not a glory job. There's very little name recognition. There's no compensation. In fact, you usually wind up spending money too. So you have to really love something. You have to work together as a team. And the satisfaction is you actually help people. Habitat for Humanity builds houses. You clean up parks. You feed hungry people. And you learn a lot while you're doing that, these problems that are still persisting, what my hope is as we're seeing the people who volunteer also start using their voice more often and are given the mic more often, because the other great thing about nonprofits, and as you're seeing in Minneapolis too, there's no centralized authority. People will come up with 5 solutions, and they don't argue about whose solution is better. They just do all 5, right? So where we have these persistent problems, it's not for lack of a solution. It's that we are giving the mic to the complainers or the people who profit from problems a little bit more than the solvers. And one of the things we've been working on through things like our Be the Difference Awards and our community, we now have close to 25,000 people subscribing to our monthly e-news about what's right in the community, where you can help, but also where are the stories of hope and success. It's like you live in a very different world if when you walk by a problem, you get angry and find out who to blame, than if you see a problem and you learn about it and get some people together and solve that problem.
However, it doesn't mean you shouldn't go to your city council or your county supervisors and complain, because there are collective solutions that our tax dollars are supposed to fix.
That's exactly right.
You're not getting them off the hook here.
That is part of volunteering too. Like we are really changing the way we think and talk about volunteering and just saying, look, from what we see doing this, I've been doing this for over 40 years. Our volunteer center's been around starting next year, 60 years. The reality of being a human in this place on this planet is, if we're telling the truth, at some point in all of our lives, we're going to need help, right? We're going to need help. Maybe we've already used public health. Maybe we've already used the services, or someone that we love is going to need help. And at every point in their life, we have strengths and resources that we can share. They could include your time. They could include your skills. They could include your contacts and your network in this networked world. They could include the power of your voice and your ability to not just be an informed voter by listening to forums, but to actually be an informed voter who knows about a problem because you've been out there solving it. Sometimes you can give things that other people need. And this idea that those are all part of volunteering, that really what makes a community strong is if everybody has the opportunity to do all of those things. And that, we are changing the way we're talking about this. Even say our mission is bigger than just people who want to give time. There are everyday givers out there in the community. And there's a surprising number of people in this community, when you ask them, did you do something, give either time or money or spend time advocating on a cause you care about, how frequently? there are just a mind-blowing number of people who say they do that. We ask people once in a while, every month, every week, every day. There's like 15% of the people every day. They try and do something good for beyond their own, and that's what's transformational. That makes a person feel great. That makes community stronger. And, these are things that we greatly value, all of us, but nobody's telling their stories. And once you start hanging out with the folks who do that, everything about the world changes. You do feel more hopeful. I'm not going to lie. I'm really sad about a lot of the things I'm seeing. But it is interesting to note the difference about who's angry all the time. You know who's not angry all the time? The people who are out there making the world better for the rest of us. So fear and anger, we're leaning in, we're team hope and joy. That's all those volunteers, everyone who writes a check not to themselves or their family members, everyone who spends time fixing problems they didn't make. Every time someone shows up at a city council meeting and gives testimony, that's team hope and joy. And we are actually the majority, but we don't think of ourselves that way. And so that's where I think we are very interested in just being invitational and say, time for team hope and joy.
We need to have our own party.
Yeah.
And meaning in both ways. If you just joined me here on Talk of the Bay, I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. I'm speaking with Karen Delaney, who has been a frequent guest on this program and is leaving the Volunteer Center for all kinds of other pastures, but in the next 6 months, not tomorrow. So this is not really our exit interview, but almost. And I think in a way, when you're on the way out, you have a different perspective to talk about what you've been there for 40 years. That's a really long time. I wanted to ask you, what's changed? You have this really long view of our community, just in terms of the world in which you work in Santa Cruz County, right? So what are some of the pros and cons of what you've seen change from, we were talking about, housing is the perennial topic. It's hard to recruit people. It's hard to get them to stay. And volunteer is hard if you have to work 3 jobs. So that's probably one. But I would guess there are other challenges and also opportunities that weren't there before.
Yeah. I would say the thing, besides just the general economic climate, right? Because, I'm a baby boomer. I'm at the younger end of the baby boomer spectrum. But when I moved here, you could be a working college student and rent a room in a house
for $250
or less.
Or less, depending on when you got here.
Or less.
Or less, yeah.
You could do a bunch of things that, my husband worked for the county. I worked in nonprofit, and yet, we bought our house 35 years ago. You could buy a house. 2 doctors can barely buy a house in Santa Cruz County anymore. So there are these big problems that affect us all, and there are lots of people working on solutions for those. I would say the other thing that's really changed a lot is social media and AI, where people are simultaneously awash in information, but not actually connected to. There used to be more of a balance between stories about what's broken and stories about here's what, come join us to fix this. And what is true about social media created content is anger sells more than hope and joy. And the algorithms favor favor problems over solutions.
And discord in general, yeah.
Discord. So very little has changed, in my opinion, about the nature of people and the nature of what people want to do. But what people think is happening, how people interpret the world around them. Here's one little thing. So objectively, if you look at data, in our community, as in most of the communities in the United States, unless you are a young Black man under the age of 25 who lives in urban areas, we have never been safer from crime. We've never experienced a lower violent crime rate. And yet people feel so afraid all the time. So it's really hard. It's really hard to have a unifying discussion about public safety and actions that you can take. And
when we can't even agree on the facts, and people have their own alternative facts that serve their political purposes, for example.
But that's another reason for volunteering. It's like, get out in the community and talk to some folks.
See what it's really like.
See what it's really like. See, if you're curious about why are people homeless, you can volunteer.
And talk to them.
And talk to homeless people. Yeah. If you're curious about, if your own parents or grandparents were immigrants and you wonder, are today's immigrants different? There's the Welcoming Network and our literacy program and the Immigration Project and Family Resource. There's a bunch of organizations where you can meet with people. When I'm actually talking people to people, things are remarkably the same, but what we consume has changed dramatically.
Yeah. And there's a guy named George Gerbner who's dead now, but he's a professor of communication studies, and he identified it. He named it the mean world syndrome. And the more violent media you consume, or frightening media, the more you think the world is a scary place, and you're more likely to be manipulated into voting for more police and accepting what's happening with our ICE people raiding us. So we only have a minute or two left, but I'm sure we'll have you back. Any final thoughts on how people might contact the Volunteer Center if they wanted to volunteer or learn more?
Yes. Two things really quickly. Our website, scvolunteercenter.org, has online. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can sign up for a phone interview or an in-person interview. You can use our searchable database. The other thing is, you were saying, let's have a party. Well, in May, we will be having our I think it's our 19th Be the Difference Awards, which were just voted the best nonprofit event in Santa Cruz County, where we are on that same website, we are asking everyone in the community to nominate the people who inspire you through their service to others, volunteers, nonprofits, and businesses. And we get about 500 of our best friends together at the Coconut Grove and have a huge celebration honoring every year the top 50 businesses, because we want people to see. So nominations are open till the end of the month. You can nominate any person. You can nominate your church. You can nominate a nonprofit you love, a business that does winter coat drives. There's a lot worth celebrating, even in these dark days. And we need to remember that and kind of call Team Joy together in person and just give each other big hugs and say, let's keep doing this, Team Joy. And for people who are tired of doom scrolling, all it takes is to reach out and show up and do something with super fun people, and you too could be part of Team Joy.
Sign me up. All right, Karen Delaney, thank you for coming in today to Talk of the Bay. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. We appreciate you too.
All right. This is Talk of the Bay. I'm Rachel Ann. We'll be joining someone talking about a SHIELD program to protect immigrants from federal government attacks. That's coming up in the second half of Talk of the Bay. Stay tuned.